Hello, Tubby and Coos fans. It is me, Candace. I am here for a special author event. So, what is cool is that we normally don't go live on Thursdays, but we have an upcoming author series where we're going to have some authors who will be reading for us on Thursdays at 6. So, make sure you tune in to our live feed Thursdays at 6 so that you can see these amazing authors. Today, we have one of my favorite local authors, Greg Herren, who's going to read for us. Greg lives here in New Orleans. He's co-founder of the Saints and Sinners Literary Festival, which of course we sell books at every year. And he's the author of like a whole bunch of books. He's very prolific. And he writes 2 mystery series. There's the Chanse MacLeod and the Scotty Bradley mystery series. He writes a bunch of YA books as well. He won a Lambda Literary Award for Murder in the Rue Charters. So he's got like a bunch of books, a bunch of awards, and writes a lot of things across the board. And I'm really excited to have him reading for us today. So welcome, Greg. Thank you so much for being here.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
And so Greg is going to read for us for a little while. And then if anyone has any questions, we'll do Q&A at the end. So Greg, I will leave you to read.
All right, thank you. I apologize in advance. I didn't have a lot of rehearsal time and I've not read this out loud before. But I'm going to be reading from the first chapter of my latest Scotty Bradley book, number 8 in the series. You can get this from Tubby and Coos. And I also recently released a short story collection, Survivors Guild and Other Stories, which features several stories that were nominated for awards but didn't win. But you can also order those from Tubby and Coos as well. I hope you'll do so. Hope you'll continue to support your local independents and your local New Orleans authors. We need your money. So without further ado, from Royal Street Réveillon, here we go. So I fished the last olive out of my almost empty glass and popped it into my mouth. I glanced at my watch as I chewed it and moaned after swallowing. There's nothing like a good martini, I said, glancing around the bar and getting our server's attention. Do we have time for another? My nephew Taylor finished the rest of his Sazerac and looked at me hopefully. I take it you liked it, I replied, not even trying to hide my smile. But no time for another unless we want to be late. This was Taylor's first time at the Sazerac bar. He'd turned 21 just a few weeks before Thanksgiving, and since we were going to a party at the Joy Theater, I thought I'd treat him to a Sazerac in the bar where they were invented. I personally don't care for the drink. Give me gin or vodka any day of the week. But everyone in New Orleans is required to have a Sazerac at least once. And now I could rest easy, knowing having done not only my civic duty, but treated Taylor to a New Orleans rite of passage. I'd also wanted him to see the Roosevelt Hotel's Christmas decorations. The Roosevelt is one of the grand old hotels of the city, and their lobby decorations are truly spectacular. Since we were going to that party at the Joy Theater, a mere block or so from the hotel, I thought, why not kill 2 birds with 1 stone? This was Taylor's second Christmas with us, and I wanted to do it right. We'd already done Celebration in the Oaks at City Park, and I'd love seeing the beautifully decorated ancient live oak trees through a newbie's eyes. I know it's corny, but I love Christmas. I love everything about it. I love decorating my apartment. I love picking out a present that are 100% perfect for the person and carefully wrapping it up in beautiful paper, topped with a bow and twining ribbons around the box. I love picking out a tree and the wonderful smell of pine that permeates everything inside once it's delivered. I love getting the boxes of ornaments down from the storage closet and adorning the branches with them. I love tinsel and opening a new box of icicles for the branches. I love Christmas cookies and cakes and pies and turkey and celebrating and spending time with people I love. I even love carols, although I do think September is a bit early to start playing them unless the intent is to drive people to homicide by December. I also love how New Orleans puts on a Christmas fest every year. The houses and buildings festooned with lights and decorations and wreaths, massive trees sparkling and shining and blinking in picture windows. It's fun walking through the French Quarter after dark to see the decorations at Jackson Square and on the houses along the way. I love driving down St. Charles Avenue and through the Garden District. I love going out to City Park for Celebration in the Oaks. New Orleans takes decorating for Christmas just as seriously as costuming at Mardi Gras. I even watch the movies and specials. I get a little misty with a Charlie Brown Christmas every year, and yeah, I may cry every time Clarence gets his wings and George Bailey decides his life is wonderful after all. Sue me. My favorite thing about Christmas, though, is a New Orleans tradition known as Réveillon dinners, a traditional dinner that originally followed midnight mass on Christmas. Local restaurants started offering these meals not just after Christmas Mass, of course, in the weeks leading up to Christmas. New Orleans food is amazing, and a bad restaurant doesn't last long in this city. Réveillon is really just an excuse to get dressed up and go out for dinner at a nice place and feel festive for the holidays. Christmas was less than 2 weeks away, and we'd already been to several restaurants to enjoy a Réveillon meal. "Another round?" asked our waitress, a perky and friendly young woman in her mid-20s, as she walked up to our table. She'd been obviously flirting with my gorgeous sort of nephew ever since we arrived, but he was completely oblivious. "No, thank you, just the check, please," I replied, fishing out my wallet and my Black American Express card. Smiling at Taylor, she replied without looking at me, "I hope everything was good?" "Fantastic," I smothered a grin. She still hadn't really done more than glance at me. She'd only had eyes for Taylor since we walked in. Not that I could blame her. Taylor was a good-looking kid, man. It was hard for me to get used to thinking of him as anything other than a kid. Sure, he'd only been 19 when he first came to live with us, and there's nothing like having a young person around to make you feel a little old. I realized that in my head, I still thought of myself as 29, which is a hard pretense to maintain when your partner's nephew is living proof that you're not. Don't get me wrong, I don't mind getting older. I'm not one of those people who cling desperately to their youth. No facelifts or Botox for me, thank you very much. I'm letting my sandy blonde hair go gray, and it's also starting to thin a little on the top. No, I earned my gray hair and my wrinkles, and I'll wear them proudly. I'll cross the gray pubic hair bridge when it happens. I do miss how easy it was to keep weight off, though, and not aching in the mornings when I get out of bed. But metabolism slows down the older you get. How many times had I said that to a client when I was a personal trainer? And not only do I no longer teach 7 aerobics classes a week, I haven't in years. It's hard for me to go to a class someone else is teaching, and I hate the stationary bike and the treadmill and the elliptical and all those other instruments of torture I used to make my clients use. I know. Excuses to fail, not reasons to succeed. Frank and Colin, damn them, only gain muscle. "Thanks for bringing me here," Taylor said, slipping on his jacket while we waited for her to bring the charge slip for me to sign. "This lobby is gorgeous." It was an understatement. The lobby was filled with trees, all done in twinkling white lights and white ornaments. The polished marble floor and the dark wood lit up, reflecting the lights so it was almost like walking through the night sky, the heels on our shoes clicking with every step. The lobby was a bit warm and stuffy, and I could feel sweat forming along my scalp underneath my woolen stocking cap. We went down the stairs and out the doors on Roosevelt Way, shivering as the cold, wet wind smacked us right in the face. I slipped the shivering doorman a 5 for holding the door open for us, and we headed quickly to the corner of Canal Street. A cold front had swept down from Canada the weekend after Thanksgiving, blanketing the Midwest with an early winter blizzard and freezing temperatures. Even in New Orleans, the mercury took an enormous, unnatural dive. We'd had a couple of hard freeze alerts, with everyone being warned to run their taps to prevent pipes from bursting. Even after that front passed, the temperature hadn't risen much, hovering somewhere from the mid-30s to the low 40s. The sun hadn't been seen in weeks, and tonight's forecast was for cold rain ahead of yet another unnatural cold front. There was a chance of snow. Snow. It doesn't snow in New Orleans often, only a few times in my lifetime that I can recall, and the city comes to a screeching halt whenever it does. It hadn't started raining yet, but we both had enormous umbrellas tucked under our arms. Canal Street was practically a ghost town with tumbleweeds blowing down the neutral ground. One of the red Canal Street streetcars passed by on its way to the river, its windows twinkling with white lights and an enormous green wreath on the front. The palm trees lining Canal's neutral ground were banded with white Christmas lights, and each one was festooned with an enormous red velvet bow. I looked over at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel and smiled a little ruefully. When I was a kid, that building had housed the Maison Blanche department store, and every year at Christmas, an enormous Mr. Bingle, their Christmas snowman mascot, hung from the side of the building. I still have my ratty old Mr. Bingle doll. He sits on my bed in my old bedroom at my parents'. The wind was worse on Canal as we walked hurriedly away from the river to our destination, the Joy Theater. Our friend Serena Castlemaine had scored us tickets for tonight's world premiere of the first episode of The Grand Dames of New Orleans. I'd met her through my sister Rain, and she lived in the old Montoyer house in the Garden District where we'd solved a decades-old murder last year. We all really liked Serena. She had an enormous personality and a great sense of humor. She also knew she was over the top, and that self-awareness gave her the ability to also laugh at herself. She was perfect for a show like The Grand Dames. As Frank said, she's always playing to the cameras when they aren't there. Imagine what she'll be like when she's actually on camera. He had a point. I had a slight buzz from my martini as we hurried across Rampart Street to get to the theater. The Joy was an old vintage theater that had been falling to pieces before Hurricane Katrina and was severely flood damaged when the levees had failed. I hadn't been inside since its multi-million-dollar renovation was finished, so I was curious to get a look at it after its facelift. The traffic was terrible. Limousines and town cars, cabs and Ubers and Lyfts swerved and lined up and honked their horns at each other as they tried to get close to the front door to let their passengers out. We managed to get across the street without getting killed and joined the group of people milling about outside the theater entrance, smoking and shivering and talking. We got into the line and I fished our invitations out of my trench coat pocket. I didn't recognize anyone in the line as we slowly shuffled forward toward the entrance. Opinion in the city about this new reality show was pretty divided. Old Line New Orleans rolled its eyes and dismissed it out of hand. 2 seasons of MTV's The Real World had filmed here, and neither had been embraced by locals. But the newer people, the parvenus, as my grandparents referred to them, were a little more open to the show and more excited about it. After all, it was a great way to showcase how far the city had come since the flood after the levees failed. Tourism is the engine that drives a significant portion of the city's economy, and a successful Grand Dames franchise could possibly rev that engine even higher. All right, I'm going to call it quits there. That was more than 10 minutes, I fear. Book's pretty much about a reality show, built around a reality show, kind of like a Real Housewives thing set in New Orleans, which I know we have a reality show set here in New Orleans that's I won't talk about, but I always thought it would be fun to have a Real Housewives show in New Orleans, and how much fun would that be? And then picking out the people, the local people who would actually, that you would want to see on it, and then figuring out who would actually do it. 2 different things. So I guess that's it for me. Candace?
Yes, thank you, Greg. And I definitely want to also bring up that people can, of course, buy your books. Just here are the 2 titles, which came behind us for some reason. That's weird. Usually it comes out in front, but these, let's do it this way and see if that helps. That does not.
Close up.
So and now I've taken you off. So no idea.
Here they are.
Yes, there they are. Oh, I think I know what happened. Sorry, everyone on this live stream. I uploaded it as a background instead of as an overlay. So there we go. Survivors Guilt and Other Stories and Royal Street Revion are Greg's 2 newest books. You can email us to purchase them, orders at tubbyandcoos.com. We are happy to get those to you. They're also both available on our bookshop site. If you prefer to go there, it's bookshop.org/shop/tubbyandcoos. And so you can get them there either way. So thank you, Greg. I'm going to go and see if anyone has any questions. Somebody did ask, what year is the story set in that you read?
I'm not really. My books are set in the ambiguous now. They were never supposed to. Scotty was never supposed to get older than 29. He was going to be eternally 29. But then when Katrina happened, you kind of, you have a actual event that actually happened in a certain period of time, and you can't pretend. I couldn't pretend that it hadn't happened. So, all right. So then I went, the first book in the series came out in 2003. Yeah, 2003. So the next one came out in 2004, and the next one came out in 2006. But I always figured that, but when I was doing the 4th one after Katrina, I just went back. It's like, okay, well, the first book was Southern Decadence the year before Katrina. The second book was the Halloween right after, and then the Mardi Gras right after, and then Katrina. So Scotty's now, if he was 29 in 2005, he'd be about 44 now, in his early 40s. So it's kind of doing the ambiguous now thing again, being amorphous. But there's also, I did the book about the Super Bowl. That was definitely set in that's 2010. So this is, it's kind of messing me up, to be honest with you, because I don't want to tie things to anything. I try to leave it as the present, ambiguous present, as much as I possibly can. But with this, and I was actually planning on writing the next Scotty book. I was looking into it, and I was trying to figure out a way that I could do it about a fictional hard rock collapse type thing, and then the cursed Mardi Gras that followed. And now it's like, oh, can't really do that now either. So I'm not really sure. So I'm going to have to, this coronavirus thing and the hard rock thing, I can't not talk about the hard rock thing because everyone's talks about it. Same thing with that Mardi Gras, and the same thing with this, but who knows how this is all going to turn out. So I would say this probably was about 2 years ago. This was current when I was writing it about 2 years ago. When I started writing it about 2 years ago. So it was before the hard rock collapsed. It was before the cursed Mardi Gras, the Mardi Gras of death, and before the coronavirus, obviously. And so depending on how the series, where I decide to go with the series, will determine when the next one is. Because I don't know if I just don't know. Do I want to do it? Because I was definitely going to follow, because this was the original plan was to do, this book came out and this was like Christmas. And then my next one was, I was going to do Mardi Gras again, was the original plan. And then I was like, oh, I should do the Hard Rock Cafe. It's like, oh, and then Mardi Gras, the cursed Mardi Gras. And then, oh, well, now we have complete lockdown of the country. So I've actually been toying with a quarantine Scotty story, because it's all about the alliterative title, and I came up with quarter quarantine quadrille. And it kind of would work with a story a Scotty story that I wanted to write before Hurricane, the one that was going to be the next one after Hurricane Katrina, before the one that I was planning to write before Katrina hit as the next Scotty book, and I just kind of abandoned that plot. And it's like, well, it would kind of work with this because it was actually going to be set during evacuation. I was going to write about when the city's empty, and it's like, well, if the streets are empty, the city's not empty, but the streets are empty, so it's kind of the same. It's kind of the same thing. So that was a very long-winded answer.
That's great, though. I would totally read a Scotty quarantine story. I think that would be really cool.
I think it would be interesting. It's an interesting challenge to write something like that. The problem, again, with Katrina, immediately after Katrina, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to write. I didn't know what to write about. We didn't know it was hard to write because it wasn't over, It's right. Like, I can write this book now, and by the time it comes out, it'll be so completely dated and out of, because the whole city has changed and everything's different now. I had to be taught. I actually never dealt with Katrina very much with the Scotty books because they're light and funny, and it's kind of hard to write light and funny with death and destruction, which is really interesting considering what they're about. But so my editor talked me into writing the Chanse book, the one that won the Lambda Award, and because I didn't want to write it, I just wrote it from that perspective. We don't know what's going to happen next. And it actually turned out really, really well. And then by the time I went back to it, enough time had passed so that it wasn't as unsure. And so my fear is that if I start writing something like within 2 months, it'll be outdated and I'll have to completely change everything. And that's why I'm kind of like waiting to see, but I'm kind of playing with it. We'll see how it turns out. Maybe it'll just be a novella or something short. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it'd be cool. I mean, I think even once all of this is done, people will remember quarantine and remember what it felt like. So I feel like a quarantine story would stay relevant, versus becoming irrelevant, depending on, I guess, how you did it. But I would guess that, like, that people would still understand that even after.
I think the thing that I would have to do, and thank you for talking me through this. Thank you for talking me through the process. I would have to do it like I did with Katrina, and I would have to set it in like April or May, where we don't know. It's like we don't know how long this is going to last. We don't know how many people are going to get sick. We don't know how many people are going to die. We don't know when everything's going to open up, and just do it from that sense of uncertainty, which kind of works with New Orleans because everything here is always kind of off balance anyway. It's funny though, nobody talks about the Hard Rock anymore.
That's true, and it's still there.
It's still there. I see it every day driving to work. I see it. So I was like, oh. Yeah, but then Charity Hospital's still there too.
Yeah, that's true.
I get on the highway to come home from work. I get on it. If you're not from New Orleans, you're not going to follow this. But I get on at Claiborne and get off at St. Charles, onto I-10 and get off at St. Charles. And so you look to the left, oh, there's the Hard Rock collapsed hotel. And then a little further, oh, there's Charity. The two big memorials. It's like,
yeah.
Not a skyline we really want to put on a postcard.
Really. Thank you to all the people who have watched this. I'm sure there'll be more people watching it as well as it lives online. So thank you, Greg, too, for coming and sharing your work with us. This is really cool, and I always like to hear you read.
Well, I always like seeing you, Candace. I just wish that when your store was open, I'd had more time to come by.
Yeah. Hopefully we'll be open again at some point.
Not hopefully, definitely.
We will be open again.
We'll be open again.
So one more time, I'm going to show you Greg's books. These are the two newest ones. Please order from us if you can. Orders at tubbyandcoos.com. And we will gladly get them to you if you would like to read them. I haven't read Royal Street yet, but I've read other Scotty books, and I really like them. And Survivor's Guilt is also really good. So I think that y'all will enjoy these books. So buy them, read them, enjoy them. And thank you so much, Greg, for being here. And we'll see y'all next time.
Bye.
Bye.